Hey, this is Rob Anspach, and I am with James Stefan Usypchuk from Montreal. And, James is a fellow social media nut just like me. So we're going to get right into it. We're going to probably bombard you with a lot of, social media stuff, but I think it's going to really be beneficial because you're going to get, my perspective, James' perspective. You're going to get it all. And coming from, I'm in a little town called Conestoga, Pennsylvania, which is in Lancaster County. James is in Montreal, so we're going to get the best of both worlds from an American standpoint of social media, from a Canadian standpoint of social media. And I think this is going to be a really beneficial interview. So welcome, James, and I'm glad you're here.
Well, thanks, Rob. Thanks for having me. It's an honor to be here, and I'm happy to talk all things social. Maybe throw in a few hockey tidbits here and there. As you see, I'm repping my local Montreal Canadiens colors. So, yeah, I mean, I'm happy to be on here and to be on your prestigious show that has had many, popular names. The most recent one I could think of is our friend Owen Hemsath. So I'm very pleased and humbled to be in such great company.
You know what? You know, my journey into social media was long and gruesome, and I started out owning a carpet cleaning business, and I had that business for 20 years before I evolved into a social media guy. And in between I wrote some books, and now people know me as the social media guy instead of the carpet cleaner, which is good because I'm definitely making a lot more money than I used to. But what's your evolution into social media?
Well, I kind of started with social media when I was in high school, and I was getting onto this thing called Twitter, and everybody was looking at me saying, "Well, Twitter is going to be it's a flash in the pan. You should really get onto MySpace. MySpace is where it's at." And I was just like, "Yeah, just like Enron was where it's at a couple of years ago." So I told them, I think I'm just going to play around with Twitter, and I really liked it, and it all started with my passion for sports. I really got into sports blogging, and I was always a good writer, and I naturally attracted traffic, and just with my opinion columns and all that stuff. So I got picked up by a couple of sports writing groups here and there, and then eventually I kind of stumbled onto this group called the Hockey Guys. I now own the Hockey Guys, which is another story in its own entirety. But my birth of social media interest started with sports writing, and I guess a wannabe journalistic point of view. And when I started writing, and I saw how things could take off as soon as you post a blog post and you just share it with Twitter, and if you get 10, 15, 20 retweets at the time, it was almost equivalent to like 15,000 hits and traffic a month. So for me, that was I kind of saw like the big red flags going on, saying, hey, there's something more to this. And I started freelancing a bit of social here and there because I just loved it. I love the community. I love the psychology behind it. I love how you can really post something that's interesting and watch people react to it. And I started working with the Hockey Guys Twitter and a few other companies, and I was just doing it for free, just on my pastime, because I was thinking to myself, this is so fun. Who the heck would pay me to do this? And I thought, there's no market for this. It's impossible. I got approached by a couple of people, but one influencer in particular, his name is Eric Tung. He's, I think, the social media digital marketing guru for BMC Software. And at the time, I believe he was with another company. But long story short, we had a really brief chat, and he had asked me what I was doing. And I told him, well, I'm just, playing around here and there. He says, you should think about doing something more profound. You're actually really good at it. And that's kind of what made me reconsider my career, my passion, because I love sports, but I realized I love social media just a little bit more, just with the whole person-to-person reaction. And if you're, to kind of quote Brian Kramer, it's all about human to human. And that was the kind of perspective I had always taken with social media, even back in the day when Facebook was a giant click farming bank of spam and kittens and all that stuff. So I always felt that element of connecting with people, it was just something you couldn't find anywhere else, short of going to a cocktail party downtown Montreal or something. So I thought about it. I had asked my family what they thought. I had asked my girlfriend what she thought, and she really said, you should really do it and see where it takes you. And this was 3 years ago. And the rest is history. I pretty much opened up JSU Solutions. We specialized in social media marketing at the time. And I say at the time because now we've kind of branched out with multiple partners, and now we do web development, web design. We do a bit of SEO here and there. And Rob, I'm sure you know all about SEO. So yeah,
Just a little bit.
it's high in demand, and we've evolved as a company with according to the client needs and as well as the capacity that we're seeing. And it just kind of went from there. Results started to speak for themselves, and then when I started, I think the key for my growth as a marketer was publishing case studies and kind of some sort of result-oriented blogs. When I started doing that, talking about getting paid what you're worth, my rate almost quadrupled in a month. It was insane just because of the demand I was seeing once I started posting blog posts. How did I reach 2 million people in a couple of months? And that actually got me like 40 leads in a couple of days as soon as I posted that off of LinkedIn. So that's kind of where I am now, where it led me. It's just client after client, which have they've mostly been great experiences, have really molded where JSU Solutions is today. Now I manage three people on my team, and I'm about to pursue a fourth and a fifth. We're in discussions with the fourth, and it's just a phenomenal adventure. And what's, I guess, most staggering to me is how quickly things develop. Like I know a bit of business before I started all this, and I was expecting a progressive development curve, but it's really there are peaks, and then there are just points of not flatlining, but like everything is status quo, and then you're gonna see exponential growth again. I think in 3 years I've seen 3 different bouts of exponential growth, which is what kind of while it's fun to do the social media stuff, it really kind of stokes the fire of passion when you're really looking at those bouts of exponential growth where you're like, holy smokes, like now I got to hire 2 more people just to control all this because it's going crazy. So that's kind of my story and what led me here today.
One of the things that I think you touched on was Twitter. And to me, Twitter is very chaotic, because the stream is just going very fast, very random. With Facebook, it's a little bit more controlled. You're not seeing the big picture. You're seeing bits and pieces of of kind of what Facebook algorithm deems is appropriate for you. But to me, I think the whole thing revolves around the conversation that you have with your fans, friends, and followers, not necessarily about your business, how you're doing, what you're doing, what you can do for them. It's that user experience that you're bringing to the table, because and I discovered this really quickly while owning a carpet cleaning business, is nobody gives a shit about carpet cleaning. Nobody. I mean, I could post specials, I could post about dirty carpet, I could post about dogs peeing on the carpet. Nobody cared.
Yep.
But as soon as I started posting about trivia, posting about everything that was happening in my my neighborhood, my neck of the woods, if I posted about weather, if I posted about people were going gaga, and now it's like, wow, okay, it's not about me, it's about them. And then that conversation grew, and people were like, wow, how did you get so many fans? Or why are you so busy? You don't even advertise anywhere else but social media. And I don't advertise, I just strike up a conversation.
Yeah, it's exactly that. And it's funny you mention that, because that's actually one of the kind of baselines of strategies that we actually create for clients. And the hardest task is always convincing them that it's not about them. And when they finally adopt that concept and really start to embrace that their social media is not about their company, their new features that are on their new phone or whatever, that's when they start to see results, because they kind of make that little connection that, well, if I'm at a cocktail party and I want to go and meet these people and introduce myself, I don't take my business card and tell them to open wide and shove it down their throat. I really have a conversation with them and actually, find out what they like and find out what's trending, what's interest, and strike up a conversation relating to those topics. And that's really like a fundamental part of understanding how social works. I mean, it's a lot of people I find like I get phone calls like this every week where someone will say, James, I want to run a Facebook ad and promote something. And I'm telling them, like, you know, you could, I can do it for you, but you're not going to see anything with it. And here's why. And half the time it's because if you look at their page or if you look at their business model or their strategy, there's either no strategy or the strategy is 100% promotional or self-promotional. And it really, really, really kind of like shoots them in the foot because they don't understand that the fans are trying to attract, they need a reason to want to follow you or to want to talk to you or to want to have an interest. And you know, like you said, nobody wants to talk about carpets, nobody wants to talk about the greatest, you know, new phone case alloy that they have for their, you know, for their iPhone that can revolutionize you know, backpack hiking or whatever. It's all about talking about things that are of interest to the consumer. And once you have that down pat, you know, like you said, Rob, it's a lot more fruitful in terms of results.
No, I did an experiment with a lawyer, and all his posts were all about him and how his law firm could help people. You know, and there's nothing wrong with that. But he was not getting any engagement whatsoever. So I went to his personal page and I started looking at what he was posting. And one of his posts was about cupcakes. And I thought, okay, I'm going to take that picture and put it over to his business page for his law firm. And I did a Throwback Thursday, and I mentioned the cupcakes, and it said something about, I think at one time we got paid in cupcakes. He got more engagement on that one post than he did for almost a whole year of him posting for himself. So now when I talk to people about social media and they say, well, what's that one thing I should do? And I said, it's all about cupcakes. And they're like, what the hell are you talking about? So now I got to tell them the story. And they're like, well, that's not going to work. And I'm like, let's see if it's not going to work. And we put cupcakes up there and people are like, oh, you know, they're losing their freaking minds and they're liking and commenting. Where can I buy those? And now it's driving engagement. And it had nothing to do with their business, but it's getting people to say, wow, you know, I need that. I want that. I want to taste that. Where can I get it? And it had, you know, so sometimes the general randomness of anything is better than posting your own stuff.
Oh,
you know,
without a doubt.
business.
Without a doubt. And I've noticed actually that one of the best, most successful forms of engagement is actually food posts. People love food. People need food. People always like to look at recipes. So I find anything regarding to food is fantastic. But what I've noticed is that people are really afraid, I would say petrified, of experimenting. Social media costs, I mean, we don't like my company doesn't specialize in one niche just because we like a challenge. We like to go and dive in and try all the different ones and see success with different ones and see the different strategies that work. So when you're going from a niche with publishing to a niche with mobile app development, you really got to understand that there is a huge amount of experimentation that's going on here. There is no, you know, okay, it's going to be structured and we're going to talk about this thing going on in finance and this thing going on in business world and this app that's developed. No, you got to talk about what's appealing. You have to talk about things that are funny, the things that are amazing, inspirational things, not necessarily the cheesy inspirational quotes you see where, you know, carpe diem kind of stuff, which is kind of overdone, but things that still give people a sense of feeling and emotion that inspire and that motivate. Those kinds of things you don't have to find in big, huge, you know, landscape pictures with some cheesy quote on it. But at the same time, I feel that a lot of people, they're afraid to do that. And I can probably name like 5 law firms on top of my finger, on one hand, that would be afraid to talk about cupcakes just because they wouldn't get it. They wouldn't understand what's the link. People are gonna think we're unprofessional because we're talking about food and cupcakes. Who the heck cares about cupcakes? But on the contrary, it's all about getting people to talk about you on your page or on your profile and getting them to understand, you know, who you are and that you have a humanistic side and that you too like cupcakes.
Yeah, and the thing about lawyers and most professionals, even doctors, is that they all went to the Vulcan school of no emotion. So they strip out their emotion. So when they go to make these posts, or they put anything on their social media, it's sterilized.
Yeah.
And it makes them sound like a robot. It makes them sound, dude, I don't want to deal with him. He just sounds boring.
Mm.
Lighten it up.
Yeah.
Have a sense of humor. Be a human. And professionals don't get it because they're all about this image. And but you look around, Donald Trump, who either people like him or they don't,
Mhm.
but they see that he doesn't give a crap, so he posts whatever he wants.
Mhm.
And he makes that conversation continue to go. And I understand that lawyers, they just don't want to think that way. But like you said, they have to show their human side to make themselves more believable in the marketplace.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the real, I guess the MVPs, we'll call them, that do phenomenally well are the ones that can actually take their niche and make it interesting.
Mm-hmm.
That's the ones, like I have, of all my clients, I have one that they're one of the first I ever worked with, and they're truly like my star child, if you will. They're having phenomenal success, and they're really seeing an amazing rate of engagement. I mean, they have a page of about 4,500 likes, but they regularly get about, I mean, we're talking between 500 and 800,000 impressions a month. They are really dominating their niche, and they only talk about niche related things, but with a humoristic twist, or with something that asks people to talk, or ask their opinion, or even to just blatantly ask for the call to action of sharing it if they agree with it. These are the kinds of things that really spark that kind of engagement with companies. Now, if you have I guess if you have a niche that's particularly dry, like let's say you're talking about I don't know, a B2B company that sells a super duper cleaning product, and you have no way, no creativity to kind of put like a funny spin on it or something, then you have to start experimenting and seeing, well, you create like a brainstorm session or a thought bubble with your company in the middle, and seeing how far out can you stretch out the idea and the concepts of the product or the company, while still maintaining some sort of basic framework of it being relevant. So in your case with the cupcake was still relevant to your client because they got paid in cupcakes. So that works, or that was the point you were saying. But let's say we're talking about like a industrial grade, like pressure washing steam cleaner or something. Well, if you can say that someone in exchange for the steam cleaner gave me 2 tickets to the Montreal Canadiens, you could talk about the Montreal Canadiens related to your steam cleaner in a situation that otherwise probably wouldn't warrant it. So I feel that it's so important to create that kind of mind map of understanding where are the boundaries and how far can you go, and what's acceptable, and really it's just layer upon layer upon layer of gray zone, without, obviously you have to stay within like tasteful boundaries, so like nothing offensive, nothing inappropriate, nothing too volatile in terms of talking points, like often politics. I mean, unless you have a political campaign. But when you have that kind of mind map, it really gives you a lot more freedom, and kind of, it makes it a little bit more fun to see how far can you go with the different types of content you're going to produce. And you can even do like a split test of seeing which content does better. Does the one about Betty's favorite cake recipe that's gluten-free do better than Sean's new bike ride that turned up to be an absolute fail? But hey, he greased his or he cleaned his bike with the industrial cleaner. So I mean, it's really something essential that I highly recommend to anybody. We do that all the time with our clients.
How do you, I have a lot of international clients, and I have to think about how they spell and pronounce words.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when it comes to English, American English versus, Canadian or United Kingdom English, where they add the extra U, or they, just a different pronunciation a little bit. And so you're typing it up and you're like, wait a minute, I think they're going to catch me if I spell it wrong. I better double check.
Yeah.
And I've done that already. And, you know, what happens is their audience, who is, you know, mostly, you know, Canadian or mostly UK, will start correcting. Hey, you spelled that word wrong. And it's like, it all comes back to me because I didn't catch it.
Yeah. And I mean, when you're looking at those kinds of different, I guess, I wouldn't say they're quirks, but they're different. There are differences in language and differences in phonics and grammar and all that stuff. I mean, I have clients that are in, you know, the UK, and I find tons and tons and tons of words that, well, I have never heard of, or expressions that for me look grammatically incorrect, but for them it's very colloquial, and it's like a turn of phrase that they use every day, and that the UK community would totally understand. And so I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, wow, like you really got to spend some time and really absorb the culture that you're about to dive into, or else good luck. It took me about, I would say, a good 5 weeks to really understand the verbiage that needs to be used and in what context. And sometimes the words that I would use to express something positive are not necessarily positive in that cultural context either. So it was a real interesting transition. Like I had said, you know, had a client meeting with my client in London, and I was saying, you know, she's like, "How are you today?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm quite well." She says, "Oh, what's wrong?" And I'm like, "What do you mean?" I just said quite well. She says, "Yeah, that means like you could be better and nothing's going that great." I'm like, "Oh, okay, that's news to me. I better call all the people I just told I was doing terrible because you know, I had no clue that's what it meant." She's like, yeah. I'm like, "Well, over here it means like I'm doing pretty good. Like, you know, I can't complain. Things are great." And she's like, "Oh, okay." But I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna say I'm brilliant from now on because there's no communication right there. But yeah, you definitely have to, you know, kind of sit down and really absorb the cultural context in which you're working in.
Now, how do you take some of the new technology like Blab, Periscope, Meerkat, and try to get your clients to try it out? Because, you know, they were reluctant to start this social media thing. They were reluctant to do a website. They're reluctant to do a blog. And now you have something else you want to throw at them. You know, did you get a lot of resistance?
I do, but I find that it depends on a couple of factors. One, if the client it has to be willing. I can't force it down their throat. But at the same time, I have people who, you know, own bars in Montreal, and, you know, they're asking me like, you know, we're looking for something new and trendy and something to really attract people. And so I'm like, do a live Periscope during a hockey game. And obviously try to avoid all the trademark stuff, but you know, you do a live stream, or not a live stream, but you record your video stuff, you know, at the pub for marketing purposes anyway. Why don't you just do a live Periscope and give people the feeling of being there? Because at a pub, and this is the best example I can think of, is that they have this kind of atmosphere that is as close to being at the arena as you can be, without being there, and that whenever something happens, it is a unifying, singular growl of happiness that just erupts from the place, and you can hear it from 10 blocks away. Now, if you can embody that and kind of turn it into some sort of mobile situation where people can experience that on some level, well, then you got something. And so that's the best example I can think of, is that how can you take the new tech like Blab, like Periscope, like Meerkat, and say, you need to use this, and how it's all about how sexy can it be. If it's really sexy in the sense of, oh yeah, you know, we're going to attract people because this is what they're missing, well, you know, that's a very easy sell. And I mean, it'll take somebody all of $15 to set up a tripod that you can buy at your, you know, Walmart or something, you know, put it up, mount it, and just have it go for an hour or so. Those are the kinds of things that are, you know, if you can make it low cost, you know, low maintenance with a potential high reward, it makes the decision pretty easy for the client. Now, in my experience, it varies from client to client. So you have to be really creative when you have, you know, a client that doesn't have a physical brick and mortar location, but rather something digital, and you have to really think outside the box. So, you know, I've really pushed, you know, behind the scenes kind of thing. So there was this one brick and mortar restaurant in Sweden, and I think they were called Swedish Chef TV or something. And they actually showed the chefs. They just mounted you know, an iPhone at the top and just showed them cooking for 3 hours, and it was one of the top top rated, most viewed, streams on Meerkat for like the longest time. So for me, that's still something that is viable, even if you don't have a physical location that is to be kind of, showed off to the consumer. What if you're a Kickstarter that wants to show people, this is not fluff. You didn't really, find someone really good on Adobe Premiere and Photoshop and whip together a video. This is really like your product is actually happening, and this is why they should be part of it. Those are all kind of incentives that people have to really take into consideration if they're trying to, sell a product like a Kickstarter campaign, or get people interested in the culture behind what made this product. And if people, well, sometimes more often than not, if people can really connect with the company that is really trying to establish themselves and say, listen, we have this product that we firmly believe in, but don't only focus on the product. Focus on us. Focus on what our company values are. Look at how, like, have a Meerkat or a Periscope of a company lunch or something, and just say, all the guys at Anspach Media are having an awesome sushi dinner. Come say hi, and tap the Periscope screen for those little bubbles of happiness or whatnot. Those are the kinds of things that you got to think about. So that's pretty much how I spin anything on a client. I just say how it should be used, how viable it is, and what are the potential benefits, and how would the consumer see it. I mean, if there's any negative connotation, then don't do it. Sometimes less is more, but if there's some sort of level of creativity in which you can show a certain sex appeal with your product, then do it. There's no harm in experimenting, and there's no harm in really showing your audience that, hey, we're open to all this new stuff. We're very current, and we're a company that develops and evolves with you. We're not just stagnant. We're not going to just stay in 2010 or 2015 when it's 2020. So I mean, that's how I've always approached it, and so far it's worked pretty well.
I'm a big fan of taking a product such as this video that we're doing and making it into other products. So I can strip the audio off of here and make it into a SoundCloud or an iTunes, or I can take the transcript and use it in an article or a blog. You're going to end up having 3 or 4 different products from one recording, and there you go. You got material now for almost a month's worth of social media. And people don't understand that. I mean, they could take that live feed, record it, download it back into their phone or put it up on YouTube, take segments out of it, and now they have little micro videos that they can share throughout the month.
Yeah, I love that approach, and actually, it's the most time-saving, cost-effective approach you can do. I mean, the best example I can think of is taking a white paper that you spent 3 months on building, or an ebook, and taking each chapter or each page or whatever, and just chopping it up into bits of content. I mean, we just one of my clients just finished a 101 fact ebook, which is roughly about 20 pages, and it took about I would say 4 weeks to get it into like production, where we can actually say, okay, we can give it away now in exchange for an email. But we're going to take that and turn that into quote images. There's this app on the Android store which is called Legend, I think, and you can actually turn dynamic text into a 15-second video, which would actually, video content that is always great on Facebook and Twitter. So we're going to do all these kinds of things. We're going to actually, transform it into blog posts. We're going to transform it into different talking points, into illicit engagement. So that's the paramount way of really taking something that's evergreen, like an ebook or a video recording, and really chopping it up and making the most of it, because it's like if you were to go fishing, and you had a really good day. Do you eat the whole thing at one shot, or do you find different purposes and uses for it, and really make its I guess its existence, in this case the content's existence, making it last as long as possible? And that's the beauty of evergreen content.
The video froze up a little bit, which is kind of good, because now I can segue into, if the audience is watching this and you're listening to James, and the audio or the video went out or froze up, it might display his alter ego name, which is Daniela or Dan. No, it's just a, you know, he's actually using his secretary's setup.
Yeah.
And when he came on, I told him I would make a joke about this because I thought it was hilarious. Because every time, you know, on my screen, I see this girl's name, and but it's displaying it. So that just must be a Canadian thing, you know. So we'll let him slide on that. So
yeah, it's not my
you know,
finer
but
moments, but I've had worse. So it's you know, I'll let it. I'll take
that's
that
the
one.
joy of and it's the joy of live streaming because you never know how it's going to turn out, but
Yeah.
you just you know go with it. And
Yeah.
and I think as entrepreneurs, you know, we are so set in our plan A that, you know, we're everything has to be perfect. Yet if you guys had a plan B or plan C or plan D, and as you cascade through the moments, something happens, you can quickly switch. And most entrepreneurs aren't geared to that switching mode, and then they panic. You know,
Yeah. No.
just keep moving forward.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like I don't think I'd be afloat if I couldn't think on my feet. It's really the essence of entrepreneurship and the spirit of being able to think quickly on your feet and react accordingly, and not just. I mean, this is you know, more of a funny kind of aesthetic situation, but if you have like a real, you know, issue where, you know, let's say you have a bout of, you know, negative reviews or something, you know, on a company page, you have to understand, you have to think pretty quickly, act pretty quickly, and understand what's a good way about you know, mitigating the situation. Or, you know, what if you're going to go meet, this is I can relate to this a bit more, is that what if I had a potential meeting with a prospect in Montreal 3 weeks ago, and my car broke down. This was right before I got my new Mazda, and it was an interesting situation because we had been kind of corresponding for about 2 months, and I was really frustrated that I couldn't, you know, get there. And so I was thinking, like, okay, how are we going to make this work? And as I was getting ready to, you know, figure out something, I realized, well, I'm gonna Skype call him, and we're gonna do a very impromptu video hangout, which actually worked out pretty well. And we had our second meeting where I actually was able to be there in person, not less than 7 days later. So those kinds of things, you got to really, you know, think how, you know, how prepared am I to react impromptu? It's not just about having the right tools; it's about being sharp and about, you know, being, you know, aware of the different options before they even happen. And I don't know about you, Rob, but for me, whether it's a proposal, whether it's you know, dealing with a client, whether it's posting content, anything, I always have plan A, B, C, D, E, F before I even do plan A first. Everybody asks me, like, why are you wasting your time? You know, you're busting your head. You're going to be there forever, having all these contingency plans. But for me, it's kind of like a peace of mind in that I know if it happens, well, you know, deploy plan B, deploy plan C. I'm prepared and I'm ready to go. And those are the kinds of things that, I mean, they're super important. For me, it kind of dawned on me. This was over a year ago, before I hired my first person. I was doing great and, you know, making tons of money. You know, it was like, you know, averaging about $6K a month. And I was thinking to myself, like, crap, what happens if I get sick? What happens if, you know, something happens? And I was thinking to myself, like, I have to do something. And I was thinking to myself, it's not fair to my, you know, 8 clients that, you know, James, you know, catches the flu, James breaks his leg, you know, can't get the laptop and things don't happen. No, I had to really think on a much more of a macro level that I never done before. And that's kind of, you know, another way of being prepared and understanding the consequences of not being prepared. So in my case, not being functional on a corporate level was unacceptable. So those are the kinds of things that I, you know, had to be quick and learn to prepare for pretty quickly, because I wouldn't want to be the guy that learns the hard way and figures it out when it's already too late, and then you're scrambling to find someone who, you know, is not experienced or isn't trustworthy.
You know, and I think on some level, you know, you were thinking like a hockey player. because the whole game playing out in front of you, but you also know that you have to be where that puck is.
Yeah.
So you have all the moves calculated in your head and you're ready to go.
Yeah. And I mean, I wouldn't call myself the the Wayne Gretzky of entrepreneurship, but I definitely say that I would consider myself playing in the big leagues at least, just because of that mentality and that mindset. And for me, I always think a year or two down the road, rather than next week, next month, next couple of hours. And I find by doing that, it allows me to still live my life, believe it or not, even though I work like 80 hours a week. With it, I was working 80 hours a week before I had employees, and I thought by hiring people, things are going to be great. I can work 20 hours a week and put my feet up. Yeah, no. Apparently, I don't have that kind of mindset. In that, if I can hand off all this other stuff to these people, well, that means I can replace that 60 hours of work with something else. But all of this stuff to say that everything I do is always with a future mindset and preparation for situations, or preparing for another stage of growth, or preparing to reach a new level of capacity. And I think, had I not started with this mindset, when I started this whole initiative 3 years ago, I don't think we would be talking. I don't think you'd know who I was, and I don't think I'd be where I am. So it all comes down to, how ready you are for everything. And when you do have those moments of growth, or those, catastrophes where you have to get ready, the safety net or something, well, you're ready. It's not a surprise, and you can kind of accept those challenges with relative ease, or at least relative, peace of mind, knowing that you have a plan in place.
And you touched on something that I think it's very important for entrepreneurs to understand, is that, when you're an entrepreneur, you accept the duties and responsibilities of being an entrepreneur.
Mm-hmm.
And, with James working 80 hours a week, I mean, I work 80 hours a week too. And I would rather work 80 hours a week for myself
Mm-hmm.
than 40 hours a week for someone else.
Yeah.
And it's because we're putting our blood, sweat, and our tears into this business to grow it, whether we have employees, whether we're a single operator. You're wearing many hats. I have a whole team. I only have 3 local employees, but most of my team members are scattered. I have, one in Manitoba, one in Dallas, one in 2 in Dallas now. One in Philadelphia, one in Indianapolis, one in Phoenix.
Mm-hmm.
So they're all over. The nice thing about that is that it allows me to pinpoint exactly what the client needs. And okay, if it's something that requires copywriting, if it's something that requires filming, photography, I know exactly which one of my team members gets it, and where it goes to from there. And I don't have to worry about all the nitty gritty. And I
Yeah.
think that's the problem with some entrepreneurs, is they don't want to let go. They have to hold the reins of everything, and it prevents them from having a joyful entrepreneurial experience.
No, absolutely. And I found that it's not just with entrepreneurs. I'm thinking of like the first person perspective of entrepreneurs like us, but it's also from another level of entrepreneurs seeking out help to grow their business. And the best example I could think of is I had met a life coach about 2 years ago, and she really wanted someone to help her with her social media marketing, and everything looked great. And then I had told her, well, there has to be some sort of level of creative freedom, and you have to be able to trust other people in order for things to happen. And the whole thing, no, I don't want that. I want to micromanage everything. And we didn't end up working together because I told her I can't run my business like that, and I can't work in relationships like that. And that's how I viewed my kind of business model for my company, is that I kind of try to treat my employees like people that are happy to work for me, that like me as a person. And if they don't, that's fine. But I want them to feel proud to be working for me. So that way they give me that 110% without me even asking for it. And they all have their different skill sets. Like one is better at community management, one is more of a hardcore graphic designer. Like if I tell him to make me an infographic, he can probably whip it up in 90 minutes. And then the other one is a mix of both. I know that if I have these kinds of projects, which I get a lot of, where there's a lot of graphic design involved, or like I need a content for a month or something, I can hand it off to them, and I trust them. And that's the benefit of being able to, I guess, have that flexibility of hiring my own people. As I'm sure Rob, you can attest to this, is that trust is huge in our businesses. And if you can't trust these people who are going to be representing your company on the behalf of another client, well, I mean, you're going to be hard pressed to find someone you can trust. And I've noticed that a lot of the times, it's a daunting task when you don't know the person. I was lucky enough to have really good connections within Montreal. I have great experiences with people before in previous projects, and so for me, they were easy hires. But not everybody has those kind of resources to them. So when you have these kind of, when you're looking at the ability to trust people to grow your business, and you're looking for that ability to really let go and relinquish some of that control freakism to other people, you have to make sure that you really trust those people. And when you do, it's a match made in heaven, and it really allows you to grow at a ridiculous rate, because once you start trusting those people, they'll grow with your company, and they'll start accepting more responsibility. And before you know it, you have a bit of like a system where you have a go-to person that is just as good as your second backup or something. So you can take more vacation time, or you can spend more time with the kids, because person XYZ has everything covered, and there's nothing to worry about, which is an amazing feeling. I was able to do that this summer for the first time. I had a business trip in Boston I went to for a week, and I had a mini vacation in Niagara Falls. Well, Niagara on the Lake, actually. And if I not had those employees to rely on, one in particular, it would not have happened. I would have had to have been working mobile or something. So growing your business with people you trust is probably the most important thing to remember when you're going forward.
One of the things that I think for me, I left a cleaning company for 20 years. I sold the business and went full time into coaching businesses, all over the world, which is great. I went from a local company to now a global company, and it scared me a little bit, because I'm doing a complete 180 from where I was helping my local clients to now, not busting my butt. I can go anywhere I want. I mean, I have a mobile phone, and a laptop, and I'm not tied down to a location. And to me, that's freedom.
Yep.
I can take my business anywhere, and I can still conduct business, which is great.
Yeah, it's really liberating. And I mean, I was in the same boat when I started. I had a few locals, but when I started to go international, Atlantic Canada, the United States, and then Europe, that was a huge challenge for me. But at the same time, the transition was not as bad as I thought it would, and it was largely in part to be able to work anywhere. And I would say, Rob, that where you and I are in a very good position. We're in probably the perfect time in technology-wise, where it's not only a capability, it's not only something that is possible, but it is something that is trusted, and it's not like hearsay or taboo to work somewhere else, and that people have that old mentality of, oh, you have to actually be here for us to work, so we can see what you're doing. It's really a new age of working and collaborating on a global scale that I mean, for my company, it couldn't come at a better time, and the ability and the trust to do that, and to have different mechanisms and different I guess accountability trackers to make sure, or to kind of prove that what you're doing is working, and you're doing things on the right time with the right deadlines and so on and so forth, and that builds a lot of trust with clients and with future prospects. And for me, my largest client started off with a 3-month contract, And we, after 2 months of working with me, they just opted up for the 1 year, which was, exponentially higher. But it was just that ease of working together and being able to collaborate at any moment and any time. So, working remotely is a huge, huge, huge benefit to my company.
I think one of the biggest struggles that most people that teach social media, they're going to get from their clients is the return on investment.
Yeah.
The client has no idea what to expect. They might be so inclined that, they spent the last 40 years advertising in the phone book, or the television, which, neither one is acceptable form anymore because it just doesn't get the numbers. So the first thing that they ask is, what's the ROI on social media? And, my favorite answer is 3. And they're like, where'd you get that? And I said, well, I just, reached into my head and, pulled it out of a, hat. And they're like, well, that's not scientific. I said, no, it's not. It's because here's the thing is at least from my point of view, social media is all about that conversation, about building trust, about, getting some type of engagement going so that the client sees who you are, can bond with you. And then once they have that trust, that relationship factor, then they're going to buy from you. So, I tell people it's all about the increase in sales. If you start and you're making $100,000 this year, but because of the efforts that you put into social media, now you're making $1 million. That's your ROI. That's the conversion. I can't give you a positive number because I have to analyze your client base. I have to, and there's some people that are following you that probably need to be weeded out because they're never going to buy from you. So, you create posts that are going to be engaging, but also, and, we don't want to purposely push people aside, but we want to discourage people that really are just there to window shop and get them to kind of go somewhere else, because you really want people that are going to, hey, this is a great post. I want to share it. I want to comment. I want to like it. But you really want to get people to share that post, because sharing that post is what's going to get new fans coming in and liking that. Facebook's algorithm, they could care less if people liked it or commented. I'm sorry, but that's, your algorithm, your insights are going to go out of the ballpark once people start sharing that post that you made.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, that's exactly what's happening with the client I mentioned, who is seeing like over 500% reach and impressions monthly, just because that's what we're looking at. But I agree with you in that the ROI is so hard to predict. In every proposal I give, everybody asks me, "Oh, can you give us some projections?" And I give them social projections. I don't give them monetary projections, because for me, it's you're asking me not just to pick a needle in a haystack, but to do it blindfolded. It's incredibly difficult. You're looking at analyzing everything they've done up until this point, seeing if any damage has been done prior, seeing what to fix, and then developing an audience and a presence, increasing their digital footprint, all the while monitoring cultural events and things that are trending, and making sure that nobody on their end is anything stupid to jeopardize it, which happened, oddly enough, that happened to me once, and that was a real emergency situation where we had to do damage control. But all these things, when I give up clients proposals and I give them projections, I always preface that these are both conservative and incredibly, they're as good as a guess at this point, because I'm going based off of other clients and other niches and my experience. But what good will it be to you? It may be tremendous. One like may actually equate to one sale for you, or 10,000 likes may give you one sale. It all depends on what you're doing and the strategy you're putting through and how it's going to work. Now, with a Facebook post or with a blog post or something, it's all about how you creatively target these people and what you're telling them to them. So the best strategy I like to use is to retarget them with pixels or whatnot, because you can kind of, as you said, weed out the people who aren't interested and keep coming back to the people that are interested, whether you're retargeting them with just engaging content, or you're retargeting them with a soft promotion, or you're retargeting them with, you know, XYZ, a new product launch. At the very least, by doing this strategy, you can actually create a targeted audience that has shown some interest in your product more than a Facebook like, which at this point is an aesthetic. I'm sorry, it's really become something of a kind of like a hollow point of social metrics at this point, because it's something so, I guess it's like it's not fake, but there's not a lot of weight behind a Facebook like as there used to be, and people do it so compulsively, or so, you know, on a behavioral standpoint, they do it so immediately that they don't think why they're doing it. And Facebook, you know, they've actually mentioned this in the last press release they had, that they're actually looking into what a like means, so much so that on a post, let's say you were to post a great picture of some cupcakes, and you got 50 people that like it, you're not going to see a huge shot in your reach. But if you get 50 people that share it, well, Facebook's saying, wow, they really thought about how, you know, what they're doing about sharing this thing. Though I have a feeling that will change too, like the like has, and the real value will be in clicks and comments, because a comment is much more concrete. It's much more like they took the time to acknowledge it, acknowledge the content, and actually say, okay, I'm going to actually give my feedback. And I feel, and I saw this in the past where, you know, if you had a post that had 50 likes, 50 shares, but 300 comments, you saw a huge bump in reach and impressions. Now, not so much. I see, you know, it's much more heavily leaning towards sharing. But all that being said is that you have to target people that, you know, would want to be interested in your business. It's not just about targeting anybody. And by targeting these people who are, you know, highly, I guess, micro-targeted, the odds that you'll get a higher ROI of any kind increase dramatically. And you also have to measure what ROI is. I have one client who doesn't consider monetary compensation as ROI. They consider how big their digital footprint can grow within a certain period of time, so that way when they launch their product, it's ready to go to these, you know, 500,000 people. For them, that is more valuable than getting, you know, $20 sales here and there. So for them, that's another classification of what ROI means to them. So it all depends on, you know, what the client is, who they are, what they want. But at the end of the day, the important thing is to remember that you're always supposed to build relationships and build on that trust factor. And if you can do that, you'll have brand ambassadors vouching for your product, which will do a lot more than any Facebook promoted post can do.
You know, this was a great interview. We're running out of time, but you know, I want you to, you know, let the audience know, how can they get a hold of you? You know, if they're, whether it be in Canada, you know, heaven forbid if they're in the United States and they go to you, that's okay. But no, I want you to, you know, give out your contact information, you know, your website, wherever they can find you.
Well, they can find me at www.jsusolutions.com. You can follow me on Twitter at JSU Solutions. My Facebook page is it's facebook.com/JSU Solutions. But here's the kicker. You can contact my email on my website, but the best way to reach me is through LinkedIn. Go on LinkedIn, reach out to me, say, hey, I saw you on Rob's awesome podcast, awesome, you know, Google Hangout. You know, and I just want to share my contact information with you. Maybe you see someone in my network that you find appealing to me. I'm very open in terms of helping other people and so on and so forth, because I always believe in paying it forward. And at the end of the day, when I'm, you know, 90 years old, I want to look back and say, how many people did I help versus, you know, well, how much money did I make? Because I believe it's, you know, making money is great, but it's only half the pie.
Well, that was awesome. You know, and you know, I hope you guys can join us on the next one, or at least join me. James can look at it from up in Canada. But you know, if you like what you see, or you want to comment, great. You know, tell James how awesome he is. He always likes that. You know, I like it too.
Yeah, who doesn't, right?
But you know, this was a great interview, and we'll see you on the next one.
Thanks, Rob.